All set? Okay, well, good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Item 3.0, recognition, comments from the chair. Don't really have a great deal to say at this point. I think the building reports, the reports from the individual buildings, the principals were particularly informative this cycle, which I found interesting. And we do have an agenda item for elementary staffing update, so we'll hear from the principals at that point. We do have a couple of one action item, one clear action item, and one presumptive action item on the agenda. 11.0, we'll take up a board policy for a vote on non-discrimination and equal opportunity. And under new business, 12.3, we'll have a discussion on whether to vote and approve Woolwich returning to full-time classroom activity. So those are our two agenda items at this point. We also, I'll just say it ahead of time, during the public session period, we do have, we put out the invitation for people to call in, and we do have a couple of people who did indicate that they would be online for us tonight. We're going to deal with that, with those comments as we deal with public session generally. We'll see how this goes. Our first foray into this much technology, I guess. Item 4.0, we have minutes from the meeting of October 26th. Do I have a motion to approve or amend those minutes?
Move to approve.
Got a motion from Lou and a
I'll
second
second.
from Laura. Okay. Any comments, any amendments to offer to those minutes? If not, all those in favor of accepting the minutes as submitted? Any opposed? No. Thank you. Item 5.0, adjustments to the agenda. Any adjustments, Patrick? Okay. We are going to hear from Jason on special ed during
Justin.
Justin. I'm sorry. At some point. I don't know whether we'll do that. We don't have a.
I mean, I think if you want to, we could add him to 9.0
Okay,
and like we can put him in there.
for the update on reopening.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll hear from Jason. I thought we got a good report from him, but there might be some questions that the board has. Okay, item 6.0, public session. So this is a call in where I would ask that those individuals calling in to please identify yourself. And the same procedures, I guess, as I said, protocols would apply. Were you here? You know, we ask that you keep your comments as brief as possible and focused on items on the agenda. Damien?
All right, we're gonna call them up and hopefully you'll be able to answer.
We do not know who this is, I guess, right? Well, we'll see if they answer. Hello?
At the tone, please record your message.
All right,
All right, well, we'll try that person back again. You have another individual who wants to address the board. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, hi. You've called
Hi.
into RSU1 School Board Meeting?
Yes,
If you could just please give us your name and go ahead with your comments.
absolutely. Thank you. I'm Dina Bachman from Arousik, and I have 2 kids at Woolwich Central School. I feel safer with my kids in school in person 5 days a week than I do in the current hybrid model. I would prefer my kids and their classmates spend their weekdays safely distanced at Woolwich Central School than being served by other outside programs, such as the YMCA, daycares, or other facilities that broadens the risk of exposure. Distance learning is not working for my family. I trust Mr. Libby and the staff have addressed the spacing issues previously identified and fully support their recommendations to go in person 5 days a week. And when this is approved, I will send my kids 5 days in person. In my own kids' words this evening, I would rather wear a mask 5 days a week than continue doing distance learning. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tina. I appreciate the
Thank you.
comment. Thanks.
Good evening.
Good evening. Yep. Okay, I should mention that Dr. Hannah is online with us tonight too. So if there are health and safety issues that might come up in our discussion, she's online with us. You want to try that first one back? Yep.
At the tone, please record your message. When
Okay, those are the only 2 you have, right, Damien?
Yep.
Well, I apologize, whoever that caller was, we do have a name, we'll contact them and apologize if there's a technical glitch here that we can address. This is, I think we should all probably be resigned to the fact that it's gonna be a while before we are able to get back together in our normal meeting setting, where we can have the public in front of us. So we need to work on this phone-in opportunity for folks to address the board, and we'll continue to work on that. If the problem's on our side, like I said, I apologize for it. Individual people, obviously, you still have the opportunity to send emails and text messages to Patrick, Katie, whoever, if questions come up, and obviously contact the board. So don't think that phoning in is the only way to reach us, but it is. We thought it might be a more personal, more direct way to do it, and we'll keep working at it to get it right. Okay, item 7.0, committee reports. 7.1, high school building project update. Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, from today, I guess we learned that the generator works fine at the new school because power was down on our road, and that was the first thing to kick on in the neighborhood. So, but just a quick update, continue the finish work on the interior. You can see from the report, the cabinetry, the interior doors and locks, and hardware that goes with that. The various types of flooring from tile to epoxy are being installed, and a little bit of carpet. Acoustical baffles that you could see in some of the music in the band room has gone up. Whiteboards are in, and the Promethean boards that are basically for those of you that are not familiar, basically interactive, boards for technology. They're in the building, they just haven't been installed yet. On the exterior, the highlights are the main front doors are actually installed now. Planted trees around the whole school, but especially the courtyard in the front. And the other landscaping work has been completed. And the final paving has been completed all around the school as well. And the big M and the clipper ship are on the side and the back of the gym area that you can see from the road. So timeline, I think we mentioned this last month, but according to the contractor at this point right now, all classrooms and office areas in the building will be done by December 30th. And then the 3 spaces that will not be complete until mid-January is the estimate right now is cosmetology, because that is a program that is not, it's going to be there the following year. The auditorium and the practice gym. And some of that has to do with some of the some flooring issues that we're having right now in certain areas. So right now we're developing a schedule for the move, as well as mandatory trainings that our staff needs to have. So Dave probably has to have the most training on a lot of different things, but Tim needs training. Our regular staff needs training. Our office staff needs training, from PA system to phone system, security system, all of those different things. So we're trying to organize those, a lot of those for, some for late start Wednesdays, to be able to get staff up there to do that, but we may have to do it at other times too. So we're trying to finalize that schedule by the end of this week. And again, keeping a close eye on the budget. I mean, it's hard to believe that, we will assume ownership of that building a little over a month from now. So questions? I know some of you have come up with some groups and had tours. We've had a lot of different groups come up and kind of walk through the building. If there's anybody that would like a tour that's listening tonight, all you have to do is call central office and we can make that happen for you. There's certain things we have to work around now that they're getting closer to finished with some of the flooring issues, but we're happy to do so.
That's great. Yeah, Jen?
Is there an indoor air quality test that's conducted before we sign off on the building?
I believe there is, Jen. I'll double check that with Dave and Kyler tomorrow, and I can get back to you on that.
Okay.
I mean, the window testing is going on nonstop, and we've got other tests that are going on, but that's one that I'm not as familiar with, so I'll get back to you on that.
And it'd be interesting, I know that we're trying to keep all the windows, all ventilation going, open air ventilation going right now. It would be very interesting if there was an indoor air quality test done with the building sealed and the furnaces running and all the systems running. Just interesting how long it takes between the end of carpentry and the settlement of all those adhesives and everything to, when we're going to be actually occupying the spaces. Thanks.
What is our, I know it's a little bit too soon to start planning events around the opening probably, but and you did just offer, folks who are listening that there'll be an opportunity to walk through the building, but I, as I talk to people in the community generally, folks are interested obviously in seeing the school. Do you think we'll have an opportunity to have a series of open houses that not only parents, but but just the community generally might be able to participate in?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about possibly scheduling just put them on a calendar and advertise them, that groups of, no more than so many people that can come up because of who we can give the tours, and also because of COVID. We have talked a little bit, Eric and Julie and I, about, something for the staff to be able to come up and, see the building. Well, they've seen it, but in, kind of a kickoff for the staff at some point. And then also we've got to talk about kind of like a ribbon cutting or event. But again, there's a little damper on that as far as, how much we can do. But again, it's a fairly, obviously you've been in it, it's a fairly large building where we can separate people. But we will have to be sensitive, to that. So, I think the board needs to be involved with those discussions about a kind of a grand opening of when that would be. Do you feel like it's best to do that, so to speak, the week prior to February break, if everything went as scheduled, or is it, the week after February break, once, students are, have been there for, a couple days. So, we need to think about that.
Okay.
But as far as tours, we've been just offering them as people have called the office, even if they're one-on-one tours. But Vita's done a great job of organizing those, and Tyler is always willing to give those tours. But we'll probably put a few more out there, maybe 3 to 5 that people can just sign up for. So maybe we'll have some bigger groups that can come through.
Okay, very good, good. Any other questions for Patrick on the building? Okay, item 8.0, Tanner, student board representative.
All right. So our boys and girls cross country teams did pretty amazing this year. They both qualified for states, and the boys were KVAC champions. Unfortunately, the state meet was canceled because the runners would have had to wear masks, which it could not be fun, I imagine. Thanksgiving week is next week, obviously, so we have Monday and Tuesday are half days for parent-teacher conferences, and then we have the rest of the week off. Very exciting. On Wednesday, I'm going to be a part of some virtual meetings to help select who's going to join me as the other student representative.
I was going to ask you if you were
Yeah.
going to be here by yourself forever.
No, I think we have,
That's great news.
I think we have 4 candidates.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I know. Gonna have to figure out some seating, but
Excellent. Okay, anything else? Tanner? No? Thanks, thanks. I know it was interesting on the cross country that the reason they, if I understood the argument, the reason they elected not to do it was not so much because they had to wear a mask, but because they had trained for as long as they had without masks.
right,
So,
would have been too much of a shock to switch.
yeah, it would have been much of a shock. So the implication was if the runners, the athletes were used to wearing masks, they might have gone ahead with the event. So, your daughter, isn't your daughter involved?
And Megan's son.
Well, we're sorry for those kids to lose out on that experience.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Tanner. Item 9.0, update on reopen, Patrick.
Yeah, I'll start with just a couple items, and then we'll just pass it off to a few different people and see what questions you have at the end. But just to give you kind of an update on overall enrollment, and these numbers do include, students that are in person for hybrid as well as distance learning. And I can send these to you in a kind of a spreadsheet, but at BMS, these are October 1, 333. At Dyke Newell, we had 247. Fisher Mitchell, 210. Pittsburgh, 84. Woolwich, 285. And Morse, 625. So around 1790 for the total enrollment. As far as attendance rates, and again, these are, plus or minus a little bit, but BMS is 88% to 90%, Dyke Newell 96%. And again, this attendance rate is from, I think it's September 8th until now, is the way it's calculated. Fisher Mitchell 95%, Pittsburgh 96%, Woolwich 95%, and then Morse is 82%. So again, I speculate why Morse is a little lower, BMS is a little lower. At Morse, we have had, obviously, had the soccer thing where we had to keep students out. That can contribute to that as well. But those are the attendance rates from September 8th until now at all of our schools. Katie will talk a little bit when she gets to her piece about remote learning, distance learning, and some of the attendance or engagement issues there as well. But I think we'll start, if you're okay with this, start with Sandra and have her give just an update. Her report kind of covered this, but just, so she can, Sandra, are you there?
I am here.
Okay. I'm losing track of time. Has it been 2 weeks now, or has it been longer than that?
We're in our 3rd week.
Okay. All right. So do you want to just provide us with an overview of how the 100% in person is going, the positives, and then the any kind of challenges that you've had?
Sure. I'll start with the positives. The kids are really happy to be back. We had one discipline incident so far. It's really been quite remarkable. We do have to do a lot of reminding, just gentle reminders here and there about masks. The teachers are really happy to have the students back. The parents are really happy to have the students back. people have been so happy that we have heard from several parents who will be coming back after in January after the winter break. And we have, I think we have 3 or 4 new students who moved to Phippsburg. One will start tomorrow. So that creates the problem of spacing, particularly in our 2nd and 3rd grades. So we're managing that by having kids take mass breaks and snack breaks out in the hallway. I take a group several times a week in the afternoon, and we just go into the music room and we sit 6 feet apart and we take our masks off for 5 minutes and then we get back to work. Teachers have been very careful for their own personal safety and the safety of other students. A lot of teachers, I would say the majority, are wearing both a face mask and the face shield that the district provided, or glasses that they've ordered on Amazon to protect themselves. Because as you know, with young children, sometimes you have to get a little closer than social distancing would like you to get. So we try to be careful in that way. Our attendance has been good, as you just heard. We are beginning to see more students coming or calling because they have a runny nose or they have a cough. And our parents have been really cooperative for the most part in working with Nurse Brandy in either getting a test or staying home. Knock on wood, our staff attendance has been great. And to go back to, I guess it's a positive and a negative, because this has been successful, our buses are now full. So when kids come back in January, or if we were to get any new students, we would either have to approach Patrick about getting an additional bus, or our parents would have to transport students. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thanks, Sandy. Any questions for Sandy? Sandy, you mentioned you have students coming back, I think is the way you phrased it. Were these remote learners that have requested to come back into full-time class?
Yes, that is the case. Katie sent out a survey of parents and asked if they were interested or would they be considering coming back in January. And I believe off the top of my head, we have 3 or 4 families that would like to return. So I think I counted, and it was a total of 5 students that would be returning.
They haven't returned to class yet, though, I guess.
No, because of the agreement that parents had at the beginning of the year.
When you made the comment, I thought, I just understood or thought perhaps they're already back in class, better be January.
There has been some movement. That was actually one of the things I was going to talk about, from distance learning back into hybrid, or in Sandra's case, full 100%, under 2 conditions, which would be IEP services aren't being met, or there's a mental health issue due to a commitment. And so there has been movement from at home to being in person for those 2 reasons, in pretty much all of the schools. But it's the numbers are fairly small, and it's for the good of the student to not hold them to the commitment for 2 January dates for those 2 reasons.
Okay. Okay, any, yep.
Hi, Sandra, this is Jennifer.
Jennifer.
I was wondering, have there been any students that have gone, that are not in school or doing something else because their parents were concerned about 100%? Have any kids moved, have ever moved into distance learning or remote learning exactly? Because
Yes.
maybe not have that, but, and how many would that be?
I'm sorry?
If there are any, how many?
It's hard when you're talking about Phippsburg because the numbers are so small without identifying the actual family. But we did have a student that did go back to, did choose to go fully distant learning because they had a family health concern.
Thank you.
And it really didn't have anything to do with if we were full 100% or remote. I think it was just they wanted to do the distance learning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions for Sandy? No.
So next, we're gonna have Katie kind of just give a
Thanks, Sandy.
brief
Thank
update
you.
of distance learning.
Sure. So
Right now in Distance Learning Academy pre-K to 12, we have 224 students. And I'll quickly run down to just give you a sense, but I know you wanted me to confirm last time roughly how many are in each grade, and there are about 20. So pre-KK is 22, grade 1 is 13, grade 2 is 21, grade 3 22, grade 4 18, grade 5 18, 6, 7, and 8 have 62, and 9 through 12 has 48. That number has actually increased. It wasn't 224 about a week ago, but as the numbers in Maine have gone up, we have had 6 families change from hybrid or 100% to distance learning. In terms of,
And the window to do that is still January, or are you letting them do that transfer?
we have to allow, well, we decided to allow them to do that whenever, because for health reasons, we didn't feel like we should close the door. For instance, we just had a family whose sibling was diagnosed with asthma, and so now they're both gonna be home. And so there are just sort of reasons that come up that we wanna make sure that we allow that flexibility for safety reasons. But we are very clear, which kind of leads into the next data I wanted to share with you, how much of a commitment it is. It's actually not at all easier than going to school 2 days a week. Where we're finding the struggles is, families are doing a great job and for the most part, of connecting, being at their meetings when they should, getting the work done, but it does take quite a bit of self-direction if you don't have that parent support and reminders. And so when we are talking to families who do want to transfer into Distance Learning Academy, we're sure to tell them what it will involve, because I don't know if everybody's aware about the time commitment, the workload, and so on and so forth. These percentages that I'm going to share with you are much lower now than this, because we've sort of made some transitions of students or come up with better plans. But I know you wanted to know, sort of as we were getting started, around what percent of each of these sort of grade levels was struggling or disengaged at any one point. And so for pre-K to 2, it was around 23% at one time of families who were either disengaged or struggling or not connecting. That right now, so that's about 13 of the 56 students. Right now, that number is only about 3 kids. So just to give you an example of, as teachers have done a great job of connecting with families, trying to find one-on-one sessions with students, or I've been making a lot of phone calls to people just to encourage them to try to figure out different creative ways we can support them. Devin Galeese, who's been overseeing most of the high school portion, has also been doing the same. So at the 3 to 5 level, it was 8 students, so 14%. Now I would say it's probably more like 2 or 3 students. So again, that's gone down. The middle school is probably the area where we have seen the most struggle with some of our students. 16 out of 62 at one point were struggling. Now I would say it's not 16, it's probably more like 8 to 10 that we're still really trying to rope in and get them to consistently come. And this doesn't mean that they're all not passing by any means. It just means that consistent level of they show up every day for every part of their instruction and complete their work. That's kind of what I'm talking about. At the high school level, it was probably 9 out of 46, so about 20%, and that's also improving. I will say the other end of the spectrum is we're having so many families that are really engaged, offering to help. The teachers and I, when I meet with them weekly, often talk about how one sort of silver lining that they're finding is they're getting to know people so much better because they're in their homes. They're getting to see what wonderfully supportive parents we have who really for whatever reason have chosen to keep their kids at home, but still want them to learn. And so they're just as engaged. They're coming up with activities for their kids. They're doing the morning meetings sometimes. And so it's been a really wonderful experience in a lot of ways, even though there is still, a struggle, obviously. But, these numbers are very reflective of what we would see if we were in person. That type of percentage of kids who would normally be struggling to complete work. So in terms of, we sent out a survey, what Sandra was referencing, just to the distance learning families to get a sense of, on January 4th, pre-K to 8 will transition over if they want to come back. It's, I believe, January 24th, it could be 20th, I can't remember the exact date for the high school, whenever their one semester ends and the next begins. In this preliminary data, these are the numbers that have chosen to go back in person so far. At Dykenville is 8. At Pittsburgh, it's 4 now. Fisher Mitchell 9, Woolwich 0, BMS 3, Morse 3. So those numbers are actually, considering we have 224 right now, are pretty low. What we need to do, however, when I sent this survey, was said, just so we could get a sense and not be completely surprised, what are you thinking right now? This isn't something I have to stick with. We are going to, right after Thanksgiving, survey everybody in the whole district, pre-K to 12, to see, are you staying? What's your plan? And again, it would be more of a commitment like we had in August, where they have to determine what's your plan from January through the rest of the year, essentially. So those are the numbers for that. And then,
Can I ask just a question for you?
yeah,
Just also, when you did that survey and you surveyed WCS families, was that a question of coming back as hybrid or coming back as 100%?
I had a letter at the start of the survey that explained it. The goal was to get everyone at least through pre-K to 5 up to 100% in, if it was safe to do so and we have the staffing to do so, but I couldn't promise that essentially they were agreeing to either being okay with hybrid or 100%, depending on what color our county was in, depending on what we were able to pull off with our staffing. And so it was very clear that it was not clear what they were determining. So it was essentially being, oh, are you interested in trying to come back in either version, is how it was worded.
Okay.
So, because even if we did have, everybody at 100%, with numbers going up, we could easily be back in hybrid. And so it's sort of, no matter what we're doing, it's almost like they're deciding, are you wanting to be at your home or learning, or are you okay with coming in either a little or a lot? So,
okay.
One of the additions that I also wanted to share that the distance learning teachers have been doing a great job of is they're finding the success in the academics, but what students were really desiring and lacking was that relationships part, even though they were doing morning meetings. And so we have started, the teachers have started doing really neat enrichment classes just for fun, which is, bring your own art that you have at your house, and we're going to sit together and make things and then show each other. And they just sit and have little conversations. It's like hanging out, but on the computer, but they're all doing some sort of themed project. And some of them will get together and like, I'll play a video game and, and just talk about it on the screen. But I feel like they're getting really creative with the kinds of ways they're helping these students to connect, even though they're all in their homes all the time. So that's great. Any other questions? That's really all I wanted to share.
Yeah. Any questions for Katie?
Just a quick one.
Sure. Vernon?
Katie, I don't want to add any additional work on anyone, but I'm wondering, with the other administrators doing a report for us each month, could we get, this is helpful, but instead of taking all these mad notes, could we just to include with the other admin reports?
Yeah, what specifically are you?
Just like the other admin reports, just like
a report on.
Distance learning.
Just a learning academy.
Yeah, for sure.
Without a bunch of extra work, of course. But
Yeah, I
just-
can do that.
Reopen.
what you're going, I mean, if you're doing this anyway, it
Mhm.
could just be given to the board prior to the meeting.
Sure,
That'd be great.
happy to do that.
Good idea, good idea.
Anything else?
I had a question, I mean, we had some, well, I won't say concern, but the number of remote students was balanced, obviously, against the staff support for those kids. You still have flexibility there? Do you think our staffing is still?
I think with the 2 staff we now added, we are definitely doing a better job. I mean, everybody has more students than they would normally have in person, except for one teacher. And she just lost 2 weeks for IEP support issues that are great for the student. And so the 2 students that were involved. And so I wouldn't be surprised though if that number fluctuates and gets higher again as we're actually finding more people kind of choosing this right now. So.
So
I mean,
coverage.
they all, coverage is good. They all have,
Okay.
Anywhere from 15 to 30 students.
But I think that's kind of the reason that we talked as an ad team and put out that survey, even though it was kind of early, just to get a gauge, because it's this,
Right.
I mean, we gotta balance these numbers. And so it gave us a good idea to look at, do we have a school with a grade where people are planning to come back, that's gonna raise our numbers a little bit here or there, and then we'll follow up with this next survey too.
Okay. Any other questions for Katie
Thank you.
at this point? No? Okay, thanks very much, Katie. And yeah, I think Lauren's idea is a good one. If we could get a update or a reopening report, that would be helpful.
Sure.
So next I had Justin. I'm not sure if you wanted Justin to kind of quickly go through the report that he sent to you, start there, or?
Well, that was my thought.
Okay,
I think,
Justin, you out there?
Yep, we're here.
yeah, hi, Justin. Yeah, I think you sent it was a great report, good numbers, always good to have, but just I think there's a lot of concern among parents and the board that we continue to meet this obligation to our special education population. So if you could just give us a report for the public, it'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I can go through my board report real quick and then take any questions that you have. Based on our October 1st count, this year we have 374 students identified for special education. That's 20.95%. In comparison to last year, there was 368 identified students. That was 19.8%. And so just a couple other things I want to point out is just participation in our district-wide programs. And if you remember from previous board meetings, many of these students are attending up to 4 days a week in person. So at Dyke Newell, in our behavioral support program and our functional academic program, we have 7 students. Fisher Mitchell Behavioral Support Program, we're supporting 12 kids. The Bath Middle School Behavioral Support Program, 13 students. The Moorside Behavioral Support Program, 14 students. The Woolwich Life Skills Program in grades 3 through 8, 16 students. And then the Morse Life Skills Program, 9 through 12, obviously, is 14 students. So there was a 1% increase in our percentage from last year. And I think it's really attributed to 2 factors. One was we had 7 more incoming kindergartners with IEPs than we typically have. We had 24. It's usually around 16 or 17. And our overall district enrollment is down. So obviously that would impact the percentage of students with disabilities that are being serviced. So that was my report, but I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have.
I had a couple of questions. I know you gave, and if you don't have these numbers that close at hand, then I understand that percentages. You broke out that total number by grade, K
Sure.
through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12. I just wondered if you had the percentages that apply to that.
I don't have the percentages. I can tell you that K through 5, we have 155 identified students, 6 through 8, 91 students, and then 9 through 12, 128. But I certainly could try and break that down in more percentage for you if you'd like.
I just wonder if we're seeing, any a pattern, concentration of need at any particular grade level, if there's a change there.
Yeah.
Because our overall number hasn't changed very much, but I just wonder if there's other shifts within the population.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to try and break that down a little bit more.
And the other question I had, and maybe it's too soon to, well, I had two more. What are the challenges of conducting IEPs and, or, that committee process, that consultative and meeting process? I mean, are you finding you can deal with that remotely in a satisfactory way, or?
Yeah, I think we've really gotten good at that since March. I give a lot of credit to, Kim Kendall, our IEP coordinator, for quickly figuring out how to set up meetings remotely. And, we've had good participation from parents through Google Meets. If they aren't able to get an internet connection at the time of the meeting, they can call into the meeting. I don't see that we've had any issues there.
Yeah, okay. And parents, I mean, there's not much choice there. I understand that, but parents seem to think that it's a satisfactory way to advocate on behalf of their kids.
Yeah, no, we've had very few complaints. Several times we've had some requests for more of an in-person meeting, and we do our best to accommodate that if possible. But obviously, with everything going on, we like to stay remote if we can.
Sure. Yeah. And then my last question, and other board members may have questions. Just I mean, we certainly understand that this is a stressful situation for a lot of folks at different levels. Students, parents, teachers, etc. Do you, and like I say, it may be too soon to see anything in the student population, but is there any concrete indicators of the effects of this distancing from their friends and the demands of remote and hybrid learning? Do you see anything?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can see anything concrete, but I think, not only special ed students who, obviously are some of our more vulnerable kids, but all students, are coming back a little bit behind. But, I've been to a number of IEP meetings this fall where we're seeing some gains in the right direction. So I think, the combination of the in-person instruction coupled with, the use of programs like Lexia and IXL when students are at home, we're able to, keep them moving in the right direction. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Justin? Jennifer?
Hi, Justin, it's Jennifer Richmond. Just kind of wondering, of all the categories that you have listed here in terms of our special ed identification, is there any one of them that has the most difficulty with a mask wearing in terms of, is that the biggest challenge in any group of students? And if so, is the face shield, is there a face shield option somewhere in the horizon that might help them?
Yeah, so that was something we were very concerned about at the start of the school year. I'll just say that we've had very few instances of students not being able to wear a mask and or a face shield. An option that we came up with early on was the use of a face shield with a drape. So we do have several students that are using that instead as an option. But overall, it's been really a pleasant surprise that it hasn't been an issue. The programs that we've seen it in are definitely in our more of our life skills and behavior settings.
So learning in the other categories you don't think are dramatically impacted by wearing face masks?
We have not seen that, no.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a
Any-
question.
Lorna?
Hi, Justin.
Hi.
I appreciate the information, and hopefully if we can ever move into normal times, I know we've all talked about having you come in and, just do another special ed presentation for us, especially where there's so much lingo and
program names and such that
Yeah, absolutely.
understand. But I wanted to ask you on the information you did provide, when you were so kind to call me when I first came on the board with some questions, we were talking about numbers, and in Fund Year 19, for example, for emotional disturbance, is that emotional?
Yeah.
In that category, for example, we're at 36. In Fund Year 20, we're at 42, and now it looks like we're at 48.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's definitely a category we've seen an increase in.
so maybe again for the future, we could, when we have the opportunity to have you and maybe some more of your staff come in, to really try to hone in on those areas, on what you feel or what you're seeing for the uptick in the emotional disability in particular.
One thing I can say about that is part of the reason there's been an increase there is we used to classify students with an anxiety disorder under other health impairment, but over the past 3 or 4 years, we've been moving that disability under the emotional disturbance. So I think you've seen a shift there from the other health impairment to emotional disability for kids with anxiety.
Okay, and actually, I think other health impairment went down in 1920, and then maybe that's why.
That could be why, yep.
Okay. Well, anyway, at some point, it would be nice to have you in, but this was very helpful for me. Thank you.
Sure, happy to do that when we can.
It'd be nice to have all of you in so as soon as possible. So, any other questions for Justin?
I think,
Yeah, Jennifer?
Justin, so are you, are we, are you able to meet the IEP needs as schools change from hybrid into 100%? Are you changing, or is that an increase in your ability to service IEP needs?
Yeah, I think it would be. We definitely get some more direct instruction with special education staff if we're in person. I mean, some of the barriers that we'll just have to continue to work through would be just how we mix the cohorts and groupings. But we've been brainstorming that all along, and I think as we shift into that, students would definitely get more of their service time.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. No other questions? Okay, thanks a lot, Justin. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, 10.0, superintendent's report. Good news, Patrick?
Yeah, just a few items. Parent conferences are coming up soon, and obviously they'll be done virtually. And thank you to the staff the teaching staff, but also office staff for scheduling those and making those work. And realize it'll be different for families, but we'll still provide an opportunity for families to discuss their child's progress and to collaborate with the teacher to develop a positive and successful experience for their child. You saw in Julie's report, 2 things I think was worth mentioning is the second-year electricity students didn't have much of a chance last spring to do any live work, and the new maintenance building that's at the high school that was built by our employees this summer is now being wired by our electricity students, which is a great experience for them. And we're grateful to receive, I think it's around a little bit over $100,000 from the state, and it's for specifically CTE program equipment. So that will help us fund supplies in cosmetology and also in welding and technology equipment for graphic design program and culinary hand tools as well. And the last thing I'll just mention is Morse has added another opportunity for students called Esports. And I know that obviously, and Nate's on the line tonight, so if you have any real specific questions, I mean, obviously with COVID, part of this was the Maine Principals Association making this an opportunity because students have missed out on some things, at the same time trying to be sensitive about screen time, so it's that balancing act. But it's, we found a way to try it out this fall for no cost. And we had a staff person that is volunteering their time to kind of oversee it. And so we've had 12 students that joined a club to compete against other schools. And it could be schools in Maine, but it could be schools from across, the country that are doing this piece. And I just thought it was neat to listen to the students that were interviewed for this to talk about they can do it remotely, but they're choosing to come into a classroom, have appropriate spacing, and it's more of a team atmosphere. And, for one student to say that they still feel that nervousness or adrenaline before a game, and also, kind of a family atmosphere. And I think for Nate and for Brandon Murray, who's kind of advising this program right now in a pilot, it's kind of seen some students that maybe wouldn't come out for your traditional sports coming out with this, and it's kind of a nice mix of students. So again, as we go through the winter, and Nate's going to give you an update tonight, but if things change as we go through the winter, again, it may be us coming back to you as a board and saying, what other opportunities can we provide students because they can't do some of the traditional, but we don't know that yet. So.
Well, good to hear.
I'd like to say thank you for whoever helped introduce the eSport program. I think it's really, it's above and beyond, and I'm not sure where it actually came from, but wherever it did, or the people helping do it, I think it's a wonderful opportunity.
No, I mean, the MPA kind of came up with the idea, and Nate, took it and ran with it. And again, it's a nice opportunity for some of our students.
No, it's great. No, it's growing all over the place. It's a good thing to be involved in.
Yeah, and if I might add, I think our team is actually really good.
Well, good.
That's good.
That's all I have.
Okay. Any questions for Patrick? No. Okay, 10.2 financial report. Deb, are you out there?
I'm out here. Can you hear me?
You're so far out
Yeah.
there.
I have power down here, though. That's a good thing.
Now you're just bragging.
So tonight we're looking at the month of October. And so we're 2 months into the student school year, and we've spent approximately $12 million. About $4.5 million of that, though, was the first principal payment for the Morse High School. And so that's a large portion of that. But then again, we received that same amount in the state revenue. So that balances that out. So everything, as far as our revenues, we will be down a little bit on some interest on investments. Obviously, the interest rates aren't what they were last year when I bumped that budget up. So that may come in a little bit low, and our student activity revenue will come in a little bit low. I do think that even though we're in October, I do think that we need to proceed with caution as far as spending goes. I think we need to spend basically only what we need, to operate effectively. We may have savings in areas, field trips, co-curricular, and that type of thing, but we also have a lot of unknowns at this point. We have salaries and benefits that weren't budgeted that we're going to have to meet. CRF funds have been great as far as funding a lot of that, but they're supporting like 75 days of the year instead of the full 180 days that we're going to need. Also, we have unknown operating costs at the new high school. I've yet to see a first CMP bill. So, those are some unknowns. Food service, we have a loss of revenue in the daily sales. So I just think that we need to be cautious and keep our eyes open as we move forward.
No, that's good advice. And we need to be prudent. You're right. You mentioned the CARES funds kind of obliquely, I guess, and maybe Patrick or you could let us know. I mean, there's been no change, I guess, in guidance on the use of those funds.
There's been no change in guidance, but I have submitted invoices because, as you know, we get reimbursed for everything that we've spent, and everything has gone through for the month of September, which was I was a little bit worried about as far as, salary and benefits and that type of thing. But so we're following the guidelines. We're starting to spend from CARES 2, which we did a renovation project over to the middle school to redo the home ec rooms so that they could have more classroom space. So things are moving along, and there's no way that we're going to be able to spend every single bit of this money until the end of December, but we haven't heard go ahead and keep on spending yet, but you never know what you'll hear tomorrow. So all is well, I think, with those funds.
Okay, thanks, Deb. Any questions for Deb?
Deb, this is Jennifer. Do you think the oil prices going down are gonna help us?
Yeah, we locked into a contract with Sewell's last year, so.
Okay.
So we're all set with that.
Any other questions for Deb? Yeah, Ron?
I more or less just wanted to have a reminder, do we typically we don't really start solid look at the budget until March? I mean, I know administrators do earlier January, but the finance committee doesn't usually gather much. The presentations we get are usually March.
Yeah, I mean, we start usually next month in December with kind of just a joint meeting between the administration and the board to talk about priorities.
Yeah.
And then, we usually January, beginning of February, build the budget. And then, usually it's the end of February, 1st of March that we get into like more of the fine detail.
Yeah.
But Hank will probably, will he be coming to the December finance committee meeting?
He'd be coming to January finance.
Okay. So it's coming up anyway, so we'll get to really digest it a lot more in the near future.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay,
If not, okay, thanks very much, Deb.
you're welcome.
11.0, old business. We have 11.1, we have a second reading of board policy AC, which is non-discrimination, equal opportunity, and affirmative action. And this is an action item for us tonight. So I have a motion to approve this policy. I have a motion from Jennifer, Megan, second from Megan. Any questions? Concerns? If not, all in favor? Adopted. Any opposed? No, thank you. That was unanimous. 12.0, new business. 12.1, we have an update on winter athletics. Patrick said that Nate is out there, so you want?
Yeah. Nate, you there?
I am. Good evening, everybody. Just wanted to touch base first on what Patrick had talked about with esports. It has been very successful so far. We were very fortunate in finding a way to do it cost-free, essentially, because it wasn't budgeted. And it's been real successful. Like Patrick said, we've had about 12 students participate so far. And this is essentially kind of bridging the gap, I guess, between the fall season and the winter season. So it's been a really good mixture of kids who, some are athletes who do your traditional sports and others who just really haven't done anything like this before. So happy to answer any questions about that as well. But the traditional winter season is looming a little bit on the horizon. So the Maine Principals Association, the Maine School Superintendents Association, the School Boards Association, and the Mills Administration, they're all continuing to work on guidelines for winter athletics. I don't have those guidelines yet. They're not complete. The MPA is working on those with those various groups. One of the big things that's going to come out of it, though, is if in whatever sports we do have or whatever we may be looking at, all athletes, except for swimmers, will be required to wear masks while participating, whether that's practices or competitions. So that's a big piece of it. And like fall sports, I don't know if you remember the discussion, the presentation that we had a couple of 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago now, whenever fall sports began. They're going to categorize each fall or each winter activity as a low, medium, or high risk activity based on what they think. Basketball, for example, will probably be a medium risk activity, while wrestling will be a high risk activity. So those guidelines too are still being developed and what that'll look like. So as of right now, we're looking at a December 7th start date. So that's a Monday, December 7th, where skills and drills will be allowed. This would also include tryouts. It'd be the first week of practice, but would not include any kind of inter-squad competition during that week. So it would just be more athletes practicing and trying out. We wouldn't have any kind of preseason competitions. So then December 14th, a week later, is the proposed date for practices and competitions for inter-squad competitions. So that being, team scrimmages and things like that, like a blue versus white scrimmage might be an example. And then the competition season right now is proposed to start on January 11th, which would be competition among teams from the same geographic area, which is very much like what we did with soccer and field hockey and flag football this fall, which were, teams from our geographic areas, such as Brunswick, Mount Ararat, Lincoln Academy, Lisbon, teams like that and schools like that. So those are the proposed dates right now. Those aren't by any means final, but that's what the MPA has put out for us. And at least our coaches can start working on preparing as if there is going to be a season. So we're not, caught blindsided. So that's really it for an update. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Nate? I hope the rollout of this is a little bit smoother than it was in the fall in terms of having the parties, the governor's office and two main principals association sort of on the same page with the guidelines.
I had a quick one for Nate. Nate, am I to understand too that these guidelines, everyone's coming to the table, including club sports? Is that maybe you said that?
Some club sports. So you may have seen in the news somewhere along the lines that organizations such as Seacoast Soccer, some AAU, travel basketball organizations have been shut down by the state. And that's in an effort to align those programs or those organizations with that December 7th start date. So the state and the MPA, they had some input in that as well. They just really felt like if we're going to do this and do it as safely as possible, that all of these organizations, including, interscholastic athletics, need to be on the same page with their start dates.
Yeah. Okay, that would be interesting to watch because there was definitely a difference in approach between what we had to do and what club sports, and I think it's great that club sports were an outlet for kids, including my own, but it was definitely a difference of approach at times.
Yeah, I agree. Long Reach Swim Club, I talked with our swim coach, Todd Marco, at the end of last week, and he, they were shut down. So it is definitely a different approach. Hopefully it's one that'll, provide an opportunity to start back up on December 7th with, the best safety practices in mind.
Yeah.
And Nate, can you just touch on fans?
Yeah, so absolutely. The fans will not be allowed at any winter activities, maybe with an exception. I'm not sure about skiing, Nordic and Alpine, but for any indoor athletic activities, fans will not be permitted this year. And that was a mandate coming down from the MPA, largely in part because the capacity right now is at 50 and we have the increasing numbers. So that won't be really, at least right now, as of right now, that won't be a point of discussion. That's a mandate.
Hey, Mr. Priest, it's Tanner Hennon. I just have a question about swimming. It might be a little too early, but I'm wondering about masks when they're on the swimming deck. It could get messy with, wet faces coming out of the water, but just wondering if there's any talk about that.
Hi, Tanner. Not that I've heard. I know that there's a lot of talk about swimming in general, about what that could look like. Maybe alternating boys on one day, girls on the next, doing virtual meets, that kind of thing. But I haven't heard anything about masks on the swim deck. So I've thought about that myself, and I wonder how that would happen. They made it very clear, obviously, swimmers won't be required to wear masks in the water, but I don't know about after they do come out of the water.
All right.
So sorry I don't have a better answer for you right now, but hopefully we will soon.
All right, thank you.
It's all pending. Okay, any other questions for Nate? No. Okay, thanks, Nate.
You're welcome. Thank you.
12.2, elementary staffing update. Patrick?
Yeah, I think what we plan to do is go through each elementary school, obviously not Pittsburgh right now, but have each principal kind of just remind you of what they were, what we were looking for staffing. And again, that's a work in progress. It's fluid because of what they've been, finding out over the last, 3 weeks to a month that we've been trying to do this. So I think we'll start with Jen at Dyke Newell. Jen, you out there?
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Hi.
So I did put a pretty thorough update in my November board report, but just to recap about staffing in particular, we have 2 positions that we're currently advertising. One is an additional kindergarten teacher to reduce class sizes in kindergarten were we to come back 100% in person. And the other position is an ed tech to assist with student support needs and supervision at the 100% of students back in the building. We had a handful of applicants for both positions. The interview committees reviewed the applicants, and we have interviewed several candidates for each position. We have not filled either position at this point in time.
Okay.
Questions for Jen?
Any questions? Jen, your report is detailed, and I certainly appreciate that. Beyond looking for staff to fill those positions, you raise a number of other issues in terms of student conduct, I'll call it, et cetera. I mean, how much of that is attributable to the age of the student or the building? There are certain limitations to Dyke Newell that you have to deal with as well. But is there a way to, we're not going to change the way young kids behave easily, but we might be able to do more material changes to the building, more easily. You think
I'm sorry.
With both, I guess, but.
Yep, the biggest piece that we need to address to have all the students come back is, of course, the spacing and the social distancing, which for the younger students can be difficult to remember from day to day. They're trying, absolutely. But for example, we had a fire drill today, and they needed lots of support and reminders to, even though we were evacuating quickly and quietly, to also still maintain distance from their peers. And similarly at recess, they still really want to play together as they typically would. And so we have extra people supervising so that we can try to remind kids and provide them with different ways to play and different ideas about what they can do that doesn't involve what they might typically do with getting really close to each other. We've taken some steps already. We've, for example, when they line up at recess, the lines weren't long enough and there weren't enough lines. So we've made additional lines and we've lengthened the lines so they know where to stand. And we've put kind of hash marks so that they know how far apart to stand. We are utilizing more spaces in the building than we probably ever have since I've been there. And we're continuing to explore ways to reorganize staff so that when we come back at 100%, I don't have 2 teachers trying to share a room and not able to have the kids that they need to work with be able to be in there at the same time. So for example, right now I have a special education teacher who shares a room with the school strategist for behavior support. In the hybrid model, they can make it work because only 50% of the students are there, and they can schedule their students accordingly so that they don't have mixing of cohort groups. But were all the students to come back, their ability to share a classroom space is really a prohibitive factor. They really can't. And so we need to shift people, not just to create the new kindergarten classroom, but to allow the staff who have those services that are pull-out services or services that are delivered to individuals in small groups be able to function.
Okay. Thanks, Jen.
Sure.
Any questions for Jen at this point? Thank you, thanks.
So next we'd have Ross.
Good evening. So with regard to hiring, we are still in need of one ed tech and a third grade teacher. And like Jen, they've been posted, they were posted and advertised, and we've been going through the applications and interviewing. And right now those positions we're still in the process of interviewing for those.
And Ross, Ross did, interview a candidate for a teaching position and we made that offer, but it didn't work out, unfortunately. So again, sometimes you think you're making progress and you have to back up a little bit. So, but Ross, you have more interviews scheduled for this week too?
Yes. Oh yeah. Yes, I do. I had one yesterday. I have one tomorrow. I'm confident. It just takes a little bit of time.
Sure. Okay.
And any other questions about anything?
Any questions for Ross at this point? Gorman?
Just as a clarification, and I meant to ask Jen this too. So I'm assuming these positions just stay open until we fill them, or do we have to repost or?
If we had them as a 2-week window, we're just, we're working with Anne Marie and Vita. We're just, continually running them. So if one expired, we're making sure that they're all up there, in the places that we had them. So we're continually keeping them open.
And in the same places, or are we at the point where we're looking at maybe some more aggressive?
Yeah, I think we've got it in a lot of different places. I mean, we'll brainstorm if there's other places that we could do, put them, but we've tried a lot of different places right now. So we're hopeful. I mean, we've contacted some other districts that are around us that are in a similar boat to say, hey, did you interview anybody that, was good, but you didn't hire? And also some of the universities that have teacher prep programs. So we're trying to make some of those phone calls as well.
As you said, or how you said it, but it's not like there's 1,000 people out there looking for these jobs. It's tough. Thank you, Ross.
Yep.
Ross, thanks.
And next we have Jason.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I just want to start by thanking you all for your continued support as we go along through this. I know you'll be faced with some difficult decisions. Just want you to know I'm here to help and try to answer as many questions as possible. I'll kind of give you a brief update on where we're at staffing wise, and then I assume this will kind of transition a little bit into other questions you'll have about us being ready to reopen as we go. But for us, as we started back on the 21st and started having meetings to figure out what we need to do differently, it became clear for us reducing the number of students in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade was our biggest challenge at Woolwich, and doing so that would require some staff and some locations. We met, Patrick and I met with staff involved in those grades, and then things have just kind of evolved since. I think the key part I want to point out is, anticipating some of these challenges that you just heard, that we're facing. I really started as we made our way along to look for ways to do this within some control within our own staff and how we do this with kids. So I think I'll just kind of jump in if that's all right. So in 2nd grade, what we're looking at is we've gotten very creative, really trying to think outside the box, trying to explore all the options we could look at. And we are Right now, our plan and what we're working towards and continue to work towards is moving one of our intervention teachers into a role as another second grade teacher. So that would become 3 second grade teachers. That would allow us to kind of divide the second grade up into roughly thirds. And then that teacher, that new second grade class would move into the media center. I do want to point out that in addition to doing that and knowing that if we do move that person from the intervention program, we've also worked to make sure that we could extend some existing staff that are kind of part-time or working not as in full-time status with us to fill those voids so that we are not trading in anything from the intervention program to make that work for second grade. So essentially, with the plan that we have, we would be moving that teacher into becoming a third second grade teacher. That would reduce the size of the class so that they could be socially distanced within the 2 second grade classrooms and the new location at the media center. At the same time, we're also have also secured the fact that we would still be able to continue with all of the intervention services that we currently have in place for our students. When we move to third grade, we really, this probably is our most out of the box idea in terms of looking at moving. So right now we are looking to move one of the third grade classrooms down to the music room, which if you've been at Woolwich, you probably realize that the music room is our largest instructional space in the building. It also connects to 2 breakout rooms that are in the back and also up onto the stage. So what we're looking at doing in third grade is moving 1 classroom teacher down to the music room with her entire class, plus it looks to be about 4 to 5 students from the other classroom that will then reduce that group so that they can stay within their classroom. It will put about 20 students in the music room, but from a social distancing and size perspective, again, combined with the breakout rooms and the stage, we can safely distance that and make that work. From a personnel perspective, in order to make that work, we'll be hiring a full-time ed tech to work exclusively with that third grade teacher that is located in the music room, so that there'll be 2 adults with those. Like I said, it would be 20 kids in that space. So we'll have the largest space available for them. We'll have 2 full-time adults, working with them all day long. That ed tech will not have any other duties other than being exclusively a third grade ed tech to make that all work. Then in fourth grade, we are again utilizing and getting very creative. And of course I've known this, but our 7th grade class in the 3rd floor is very small. There's only a total of 21 students, I believe it is. So in their hybrid schedule, we literally have right now some groups of classes that are only 4 students. So we are going to be combining those 7th grade into 2 groups, essentially. So 2 groups of 9, I think it figures out to be, so they can still be safely socially distanced. That will allow us to move one of our middle school teachers into the 4th grade team and create a 3rd, 4th grade so that we can split those classrooms up into groups. And then that staff member in that class will take place in the vacated 3rd grade classroom, which again, if you're familiar with Woolwich, that means our 3 4th grades would be lined right up together there and would be in that place. So kind of in summary, what we'll be looking, and then the other piece that we will be hiring is an ed tech to be kind of just a full-time duty person. One of the challenges in bringing everybody back is for all of our lunches, all of our recess duties, we're doubling the number of kids. So we really need to double the supervision on that. So we would have a person there that would be able to be part of arrival procedures, part of dismissal procedures, part of all of those additional duties throughout the day. And then utilize that person. If there happens to be any time in their schedule, we will utilize them to connect with some of our remote learners and just continue to be monitoring and checking in with some students that might be a little more just needing that additional support on their off days. So that's kind of where we're at. So technically, by able to implement all that, I should also mention that, I just think in a time when there's so much uncertainty, being able to do this with the ability to have the primary instruction still under the guidance of people that we already know at Woolwich Central School that already know all of our procedures, already know all of our technology, already know all of our systems, is only going to prove to be beneficial for our students and families upon return. So that's kind of where we're at. And I'll kind of stop talking now and answer any questions you may have, or if you want to try to move into any other details around kind of the plan coming back, I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, let's see if there are questions first, on what you've discussed or presented.
It's really thorough.
Any questions, Megan?
I was just wondering if you had advertised or interviewed for another teacher for that third grade class.
Good question, Megan. We have not at this point. Again, I think with this plan, we're looking at trying to control that with the staff that we know and the staff that we have in the building, and support them in doing so. And for me, if we're able to achieve that and able to keep things with the relationships that we already have established, I think it continues to increase the likelihood of success for our students and families.
Okay. But you're hiring ed techs though? That'll be new to the building?
Yeah, so I would have so we did not interview specifically for a teacher. We have an ed tech that we will be able to hire, and for both those, actually, I just have to kind of formally go through the process, but we have staff that are currently in positions at school, long-term sub positions that we will have that we can transition into both those ed tech positions.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Jason?
This is just on staffing. This isn't about going to 100%.
Right.
Okay.
It's just
Yeah.
the detail of what he's presented at this point. Any other questions? No? Okay, don't go far, Jason.
Nope, I'm right here, ready and waiting.
So if there are no other questions on this, on any of the elementary principals' reports, any further questions for Ross, for Jen? No? Okay. So item 12.3 is discussion on whether to return Woolwich to 100% in person. And this is perhaps an action item if that's where our discussion takes us.
I guess I can start, just make a comment. I mean, obviously, we have Dr. Hanna on the phone as well for any questions that you might have. I mean, it's obviously the recent increase in cases is concerning statewide, countywide, and also because we've had a couple cases here in our district. And our goal has always been to have our pre-K to 5 students come back 100%. And especially, again, what's important is that we can ensure that we can meet the 6 requirements that are outlined by the DOE and the CDC. So, we may get to a point where we're required to go back to a hybrid or go to a remote. We can't predict that piece. But again, we felt like having our younger students come back to help support the development academically, socially, and emotionally, is critical, is important. And also, as someone mentioned earlier tonight, keeping them in, what you could say is one group or one cohort is also, a positive. But again, we've asked Dr. Hanna to join us, this evening as well to, talk about the increasing cases around us and, and how that balances out with returning to 100% in person. So I think, not to jump right into, I don't know if you want to hear from Dr. Hanna first with some things that she might have to say. December 7th is the date that Jason has felt, would be from a timing standpoint, would work to have Woolwich come back 100%. Anyway, just wanted to throw that stuff out there.
I think it'd be great to hear from Dr. Hanna because, I get a straight answer. I mean, I'm hearing it's not really the schools, but, causing the uptick, but let's hear from the expert, if that's something to be concerned about or not.
Dr. Hanna, are you there?
Yeah, still here. So I would agree with you that the uptick is still doesn't seem to be related to in-school transmissions. I mean, when you look at our rates, I mean, our rates in Maine are, despite the fact that they've gone up, they are still pretty enviable when you look at the rest of the country. As of today, we're at 2.69%. I checked the CDC site, and they have Saginaw County listed as a 1% positivity rate average for the past 14 days. And looking at multiple different guidelines for having kids in school, you know, there have been many changes. Different states are taking different approaches. But if you look at CDC recommendations at what they consider the lowest risk positivity rate for starting schools, they set that at 3%. So we in Saginaw County are at only 1%, so a third of that. So I think it makes sense, you know, from looking at just pure numbers community-wide, that we try to make this happen for the kids. Also, when you look at, you know, you look at kids that are becoming positive, we are still seeing kids who test positive mainly because they have an adult in their life so it's through community transmission, not child-to-child transmission within the schools. And that's not just in Maine, but that's nationwide. They're seeing that, and that's in particular with the younger kids.
Okay, thanks. Any questions specifically for Dr. Hannah? No? Jennifer?
Dr. Hanner, I came across a situation recently where a staff member in a different school was not allowed to get a COVID test because they were asymptomatic. I'm just curious about the ability to get COVID testing to really know, you know, how prevalent this is. Do you know in our area, can asymptomatic people get COVID tested, children and adults, without a referral at no cost?
So I don't know about on the adult side, but for kids, generally what happens is they get an order placed by their primary care physician. So kids don't necessarily have to go in to be seen and pay a copay to be seen to get a test. They can call up and say, my child has these symptoms, and we can order a test for them. So in terms of the not being able to get tested because they were asymptomatic, so there was recently, it was within the last week or week and a half, where the testing capacity, and it wasn't even that the lab didn't have the capacity to run the test, it was the ability to have the staff to actually collect the swab. Got a little overwhelmed there briefly. And so what they were doing was they were putting a hold on people who were getting tested just for traveling. But people who were asymptomatic contacts could still come in to get tested. So there are still lots of options for the more accurate PCR testing. There's the testing tent here. There is an option even down at the Jetport now that does PCR testing. For symptomatic people, CVS doing PCR testing. So there are multiple options. But I think the hang up that people were having was lots of people wanted to travel. And so they were having trouble keeping up with, you know, people who had no symptoms who just needed it to go out of state. I personally had the same thing. I was trying to get to New York to pick up my son from college and needed a test and was having the same roadblock last week. So.
Okay, yep, Lorna?
Hi, Dr. Hannah. I just wanted a clarification, if you could help me with that. I was listening to Dr. Shaw today, and of course he was talking and speaking to the fact that transmission, the data is very favorable that transmission in schools is not happening. As you said, it's more coming in from community spread. But the question, what I don't understand is when we speak of an outbreak in a school, which is 3 or more cases, is that outbreak from transmission, or is it that maybe 3 cases were brought into school from different sources?
So it could be just 3 cases from different sources, but it's 3 all at the same time. So, yeah.
Okay. That's one thing I wanted to ask you tonight. And then just before I even heard him speak today, you know, I was just going to ask you about the data and how it looks for schools, because from what we're hearing on the news and the updates, it didn't seem to be I mean, it's very scary about the numbers, but the drivers seem to be not schools. And the spread doesn't seem to be, not that it never will be. But he spoke to that today anyway, so I was going to ask you that. Anyway. That was it.
Okay, thanks, Mona. Any, Dr. Hannah's not going anywhere, but are there any questions at this point? Any additional? No. Okay.
I'd like to just, thank Dr. Hannah. I mean, she has done so much for us. Our nurses call her all the time. We're texting her or calling her and really appreciate, Dr. Hannah, all you've done and thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you to you guys for doing everything. I mean, my kids are, or one of my sons is getting the benefit of all the work you guys are doing. So thank you.
I guess that was kind of what I was going to ask. I mean, just not to put you on the spot, but as you've had the opportunity now over several weeks and months to observe what goes on in the RSU in terms of our adherence to protocols, you think we're doing a good job? Or?
I personally think you're doing a good job. I mean, I'm not in the schools, but I hear from parents who are very happy. I'm thrilled with what's happening with my son. I, obviously, like every parent, wish he could be there more, but also understand that that is not possible in the time of COVID for his setting. But I think you guys are doing a great job. I really do. And I, when I talk to my colleagues, we compare notes on schools. I think you guys have gone about this in a very thoughtful way, and you've really kind of focused on the safety of the kids and the staff. You've done a great job.
Thanks. Even though, as Laura pointed out, this could change overnight, but we are where we are at this point anyways. So Patrick, do you have any other thoughts on how to organize our discussion? Otherwise, I'm just going to open it up for discussion of.
So again, I think Jason is, I think he's gone, back and forth with a date that might work. We haven't offered, an agreement or a contract to anybody at this point, but he has interviewed and found candidates that are, in this case, known commodities to students and staff over there. So the timing has worked well in a lot of places here. And the staff has been very, very flexible, very professional through this. And so I think December 7th, in order to, we have staff that need to move within the building. We have, staff that need to come in and, receive some additional training and ordering some supplies and for, a teacher that's moving down to another grade. So there's, in communication with families. So all those things, need to happen and take a little bit of time. So, Jason, I don't know if you want to add anything else, but it was December 7th, I think, was the date that you were recommending, correct?
That is correct, Pat. And I'm that's the thing. Like, I'm happy to answer any and all questions. I mean, I think for me, the next critical piece, once we've kind of, are at a comfortable spot as we can get with the staffing and locations, which I think we are pretty, I think we are set there. Still working through the logistics of it, but I think as far as who and where, we're pretty good. But then the next thing is just, as you heard me mention, I mean, this is going to involve some student movement, and that's going to be a transition for families and for students. And I want to make sure that we're able to do that in a timely manner. Obviously, just so you know, the framework we've kind of started having those internal discussions, and the biggest framework we're using for that is kind of the social emotional, as best as we know, the students in these classrooms that are going to have to face these changes, who has, been, that resiliency piece in terms of how they've come back from just last spring, and trying to protect those that have had a harder time coming back in, to make sure we're not upsetting that again for them, but trying to strike that balance. From there, it's, really maximizing and relooking at, our intervention schedules, our special ed schedules, making sure we can meet the academic needs of all of our students as we bring them back. And that's just kind of the next phase for us, is just how, depending on your input tonight as a school board, how quickly we can move forward with that and to try to keep this thing moving. I mean, I know I go, like Pat said, I've been back and forth, but what I've kind of come to realize also is we're going to end up using all of these models at some point this year, most likely. So, the ability to put a plan in place and have, everyone back, even if it's for a short period of time now, just puts us in a better position moving forward through the spring to adjust. Because if we do have to close for an outbreak, or if we do have to close for a period of time, it's not going to be like last year where you're done for months. It's going to be quickly figuring out how long and then in what way can we come back. So I just think, we're, as hard as it is, and I mean, it is exhausting work, as you know, and I just would speak for my staff and my teachers. It's all encompassing. I mean, they're planning for all 3 models of learning right now. It's exhausting work. And I just commend them for rising to the occasion. As they are dedicated. And I just, I think we have a plan. I think we have a plan that can work.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Questions for Jason? Yep, Anita?
I have a question, it may be more for Dr. Hannah than Jason, but in terms of that proposed date to come back, that's 7 days after the last day of Thanksgiving break. So, there's a lot of concern out there about family gatherings and people doing really what they ought to do in terms of that. And, I'm wondering what Dr. Hannah thinks about that as far as a safe time to return to 100%. And if we should be thinking about that and deciding on a date.
Anita, are you thinking more like 14 days or like?
Yeah.
14 days after that, yeah, okay, just clarify.
Just wondering if
Yeah.
we should think about that, or if it's even anything worth being concerned about.
No, I would agree with you. I mean, I think any sort of situation where you're going to have mass gatherings of people, you have to think about what happens in the subsequent 2 weeks. Kind of like our I don't know if this bump is because of Halloween, but certainly in the colleges that was the case. So it certainly would make sense to wait the 2 weeks, although that does put you very close to Christmas then, and Christmas break, but maybe that gives you a chance to work out your kinks. But yes, to your point, that 14 days after the exposure is when you start to see the rise in cases.
Jennifer?
I have a long list of stuff, so if anybody wants to interrupt me at any point, please do so. I'll just kind of continue on and please, you have questions. But I have a long list because I've just tried to go back and reflect about all the things that we asked for Phippsburg, how they were going to plan to open. And then I've kind of learned from that, reflected, and I have a lot of other things, but I'll kind of try to start off in the same question that I did when I started with Phippsburg. With you, Jason, is that I'm going to have to ask, what's your staff support for all these changes? And, we had a survey that had come out recently in Phippsburg, so we could really talk about those specific questions, how many people were in support of it. But as you mentioned, your staff is so important. So I would like to start off with the questions of, concerns from your staff and those logistics that you say still aren't answered yet. When would you plan to have those logistics resolved? And just to get a general sense of, what your staff has brought forward in terms of support or concerns about this move.
Sure. So I would just clarify, like when I say the logistics haven't been answered, I mean, we've been in discussion since. So I just don't know. So you'll probably get to more of those questions. We have a lot of procedures that have been discussed and reviewed and kind of put in place. It's just hard to really make them public or go until we're there. So I just, we'll work through that as you ask some more questions tonight. So please feel free to ask. In terms of the staff support, I think it's just like in any situation. There is concern. I mean, we're trying to do something that's never been done before. I think the area of concern. There is concern about a third grade group going into the music room and becoming a larger group. We've tried to mitigate those concerns with knowing that that is the largest space. We can still space even with that number of students, with the addition of the 2 breakout rooms and the stage and having another adult in there for full time, we probably can space closer to 6 feet within that room. So, it's still a concern. Most of the concern that I hear from staff is more about not wanting to give up any of their students, to be perfectly honest, is they've invested with these students and families, and we are trying to figure out and find a way to strike that balance that in order to bring people back, we are going to have to create some student movement, and how best do we do that to make it successful for everyone. So, I think that's probably the primary concern that I hear from most staff is how do we, do that, how do we do it, and how do we make sure it's communicated, and how do we get that done successfully to meet student needs? That kind of brings me back to my point, though, knowing that no matter how we did it, that would be the biggest concern. I just feel so much more confident in the plan, knowing that I know all of the adults that are going to be involved in doing this. And for most families, they will know, or at least know they're a member of the Woolwich staff. So it reduces that layer of not knowing and not having to train everyone just to join our school community and then take this, this new task on. So that's where I draw a lot of confidence from that. But I had it just like with any, there are some reservations, Jen. I just think that, kind of what I alluded to earlier, I think we're going to face all of these situations at some point, and, we need to make sure we have the best plan we can put together to make it happen.
Okay, so to go back to look at the change in students in order to make this 100% possible, it seems like we are changing students, we're impacting students in the second grade, in all interventionist services, the third grade, the fourth grade, and the seventh grade. Is that correct?
That is correct, and yes, that is
and
correct.
Maybe the middle, and 8 and 9, or 7, 6 and 8 a little bit, because you're taking out a middle school teacher.
Yeah,
So there's some impact in there for those other grades.
Yes, it will. We will be able. It will mean that there are 2 classes that the staff member taught to the 7th grade that will have to be picked up by, other staff. It won't change their overall number of classes that they teach within the course of the day. They'll still get all of their planning periods, et cetera. But it will definitely be a change to all of those grade levels. Yes.
Okay, so we're disrupting students and their teachers combinations in all those grade levels. I wanted to make that clear.
Yes.
So you said there was some concern about staff, as you said. I'm kind of looking for specifics here, Jason. So when you have these concerns from staff about changing students around or on that level, my question to you is, how do you address that? Who makes the decision on what students lose their classroom teacher or their current classroom teacher, and who gets reassigned?
Yep. So it's a great question, Jen. What we've done is we've tried to bring together a team that work most with that grade level. So, the discussions will involve the classroom teachers, special ed teachers, interventionist teachers, if they're involved in that grade level, myself, dean of students, school counselor if needed. And, we've really tried to do, again, like I said, I think the first criteria has been kind of to the best that we're aware of, the social emotional transition or social emotional state as they've handled the transition just back to school right now. For example, if we have a student that has taken this long to build a relationship with that teacher and it was a struggle in the beginning, but now they've turned a corner and making progress, then we're probably not looking to upset that immediately. We're going to try to preserve that if we can. But, so that criteria, just in terms of having the team that's works the most with these families and with these students, having them together to discuss all of those students and how best we can do this. I think, there's no doubt that we have to be aware, because of how the different levels that it impacts, as you already asked, Jen, the ripple effects, we have to be aware of that. So as we're looking at these students, if we're able to regroup, knowing what we know now, if we're able to regroup to better provide services or to increase the special ed service, knowing, for example, like within special ed, because we're cohort grouping, if we have the opportunity potentially to put some kids together so that we can increase that time and it doesn't, within that same grade level, but now they could potentially be in the same class, then we're looking at that possibility of doing that. The goal would be, and again, it ultimately will depend on the timeline and the date, but the goal right now that I have in mind, working off the December 7th timeframe, is, we will try to be finalizing those lists this Wednesday so that we can start to communicate with families. As far as the actual communication with families, and I suppose the final decision, that will rest with me. There will be a letter going to those families. I am open. I will be, if within this time frame, I would be open and available all day next week, Monday and Tuesday, to do virtual conferences with families, and we'll find our way to make it work the best that we can. Does that cover it all?
It does. I'm glad that you brought up the communication piece, because I know that's something that we've learned as a board, how important it is, how to let people have that time. So as you're communicating to all these families that are both having to have their students move to a different teacher or move to a different circumstance, when we have a family that doesn't want to do that for whatever reason, will they have an opportunity, based on this process that has to change, would they be able to go remote in terms of not wanting to be in a new class or something like that? Is that opportunity available to them?
I think the goal, Jen, is to make sure we find a situation that works for the family. We're going to do our best on our internal side to create what we think will be a successful situation for the student. I will then communicate with that family about that, and we will go from there. I have not it would be numbers. I assume, just as, Katie spoke to earlier, that when we have families that are in need of that as an option to make it work, then we're trying to accommodate that. So I really don't see this as being very different. I think as again, the status of the communities around us has changed, but just a month ago, there were 80% that were in favor of coming back 100%. So it's a give to get. It can't be done the way it always was. So, we're trying to figure out how to strike that balance.
Okay, and please, anyone interrupt me whenever you want. So some of the logistics that came up before were, how does a regular, especially for the younger kids, what they're able to do in a hybrid situation that they won't be able to do when all the students are there in any classroom. So, for example, if we are dealing with issues of like breaks for the kids, which like snack time for the kids.
Yep.
Is that one of the logistics that you still need to kind of work out, or is it already understood that those things wouldn't necessarily be available in 100%?
So some things will change. One of the things we're going to try to take advantage of, and again, forgive me because I just didn't know how much detail to go into in the beginning, but for example, what will come along with this will be a staggered start to the school day. So we will have to have half of our students come in at 8:15, and then they will leave at 2:15, and then we'll have to have the other half that will arrive at 9:15 and leave at 3. So it's thinking about like breakfast and snack. What we're gonna end up creating is kind of two quote unquote food opportunities within the course of the day, where when they are in the half of the students are there in the morning with that first group, they would still be able to have a breakfast or a snack in the morning at that time when they first arrive. And then on the back end of the day, when students leave, so that group will leave, then there'll be about 45 minutes to 45 minutes left with the second group, then they would have a small snack. It may not be the same breakfast, but it would be an item, a food item that we're working with Joanne and Tim to provide, so that we're providing, still providing a lunch during the middle of the day, and then another snack / breakfast, whether it be in the first group in the morning or in the second group in the afternoon. That's our plan that we're going to try to attempt to start with. We were also back in September talking about having an option of students just taking it home at the end of the day. So that might become a fallback plan if we can't pull it off with the staggered start, but the staggered start is the initial plan. or utilizing that time within those, because that's when we would have the most flexibility within the room to do something like that.
Okay, that's just, okay. And that's interesting because to me, from my time being in the classroom in those grade levels, it wasn't breakfast or snack. It was breakfast, snack, lunch, you know, like, so it sounds like you're going to combine the breakfast and snack options. Again, change, I guess, into that, just trying to understand the logistics of everything.
You know, and when appropriate, we will still provide a snack in there as well. It's just, you are correct. When we come back, you know, when we come back and we have everybody together in that classroom from, you know, whatever, 9:30 to 2, there isn't going to be a lot of opportunity unless we can get outside to do that. And you know, that, so that is kind of why you're right. It is a change, and it's kind of the closest we can get to it, I think.
And so my next question would be about mask breaks. So given the logistics of the number of the size of our students, and even in those students, let's say K, 1st and 5th, that aren't directly impacted by this, but are we still going to be able to have mask breaks when we need to be, we can't go outside? Is there a plan for that for the kids?
The most obvious one will still be the lunchtime. And then again, we would try to work within those times in the morning or in the afternoon. Then beyond that, though, it would have to be very structured. Sandra kind of alluded to earlier of having possibly a small group or rotating, one at a time through, by the window or in the hallway to be able to do that safely. But yeah, there's no doubt, Jen, that what you're alluding to is going to be the biggest challenge of having all of our students back in person.
Okay. So it sounds like that's not clear exactly how that's going to happen then, right?
Well, it's going to be one of the two. I mean, I think it will depend on which classroom you're in. I mean, if I have a classroom that only has 10, that might look a little different than the classroom that has 14 or 15.
Okay, so the classrooms that have 14 or 15, exactly how a mask break would happen, that's just going to have to be kind of figured out. Then you're saying it's still kind of up in the air.
It's going to be one of those two options that I outlined. That's the only choice we have. Yes.
Okay. So is there a number, do you have it? Like, I'm just trying to get my head around the number of students that are going to be impacted by, instead of hiring outside staff, by changing the staff internally. And I do understand, and I agree, a known person has a lot of benefit, but by adjusting the staff internally, it does also have that domino effect, like you inferred. So I guess overall in the entire school, coming back 100%, in terms of classroom teacher student interaction or assignment, do you have a number on how many students are going to be impacted by that? By needing to have a different one-on-one classroom teacher?
Well, I mean, I guess specific numbers too. I guess it depends on how you want to define it. I mean, to me, in my personal opinion, every single student who walks in the building is going to be impacted by the changes, no matter whether I hire out of district people or within our school. Specifically, though, to this situation, if we had gone a different route and just hired a separate teacher for second grade, third grade, and fourth grade, then it wouldn't, we wouldn't be impacting the interventions, and we wouldn't be impacting seventh grade the way we will be. I think, again, I believe that if I was a parent and I knew the people that my students were going to, even if there was a change, I would be much more comfortable with that than someone who does not know what we've been doing at Woolwich, does not know any of these procedures. And again, we're just trying to figure a way to make it happen.
Okay. It's interesting you brought up the issue about parents. Do you have any insight on the number of parents that will not be, given the current situation, not last time we served, but the current situation? Is there any insight on the number of parents that have spoken to you or classroom teachers about not wanting to send their students back if it was to go full time?
I mean, I haven't had anybody reach out directly since the survey in which 80% responded that they would be in favor of, 80% of the respondents at Woolwich would have been in favor of coming back 100% in person. So I have not had anybody reach out to me directly, nor have I had a staff member say that so-and-so said they weren't coming back if, we go 100%.
Okay. Something that's just kind of come up to me in terms of, since we voted to allow Pittsburgh to go back in, is the issue specifically of cleaning and how we're handling that with, now there is an opportunity to have a deep clean on the day where we don't have majority of the students in our buildings. So I would like to add that as a new item to talk about. And I'd like to ask first, so we're going to reduce the amount of time that our custodial staff will be able to really deep clean and keep our services, safe for children and staff. So my first question would be, are there any issues with the current level of cleaning that you know of in terms of how the custodial staff is able to meet the expectations of what, the additional cleaning expectations? And I guess I'll start from there and then I have another cleaning question. So starting out now.
Yeah. So now I think that's a very valid point. And other than the bare fact that we won't have access to as many places on a Wednesday, I would say that, I guess I'd phrase it this way. During the day when we have our 2 daytime custodians, they basically rotate through every bathroom and every cafeteria eating location following every lunch. They are doing everything in those areas. So like when they go into the cafeteria after second graders had lunch, they are wiping down every surface, whether a student sat there or not. Same when they go in the bathroom, they're doing every surface that's in the entire bathroom, not just areas that we think were used. So I think from that perspective, in terms of the daily things that are happening, those are going to be able to continue without a real impact. But you raise a very good point that just we won't be able to access as many places on a Wednesday as we can now. So some of that would have to shift towards, working with Benchmark to maybe reprioritize some of those things with, the split between the night crew and the day crew, so that some of those surfaces are getting cleaned not only during the day, but more often potentially at night as well. But yeah, that was something we would address.
Okay, so there's a general satisfaction with how the cleaning is done now, is what you're
Correct.
saying? Okay.
Katie, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think it's worth clarifying that we have students in every building on Wednesdays. And so one of the things we've tried to work on and has improved is that the deep cleaning that we do on a night, in a night routine, is actually the same we would do on a Wednesday. So I wouldn't want anybody listening to think they only do a deep cleaning on Wednesdays. We're cleaning every surface deeply at night. That's the way we do the chairs and the tables and the whole room gets sprayed. That's supposed to be consistent across all of our buildings. And we've even said that should happen a little later, so particles can settle before that's all done. So I personally don't know how much more we're cleaning on a Wednesday than we would every night, given that we have a Monday group right now and a Tuesday group, and the deep cleaning actually needs to be happening in the nighttime routine, which it is. And we have students in on Wednesdays. So I guess we don't have Dave here, but maybe Patrick, but I think the places where deep clean is happening on Wednesdays differently that we sometimes hear about are places that have kids Monday, Tuesday, and might not be cleaning as thoroughly between groups, I don't know, and then doing a major cleaning on Wednesday. We're cleaning deeply in the same ways with the same products every time we clean.
It's mostly access, because
Yeah.
on Wednesdays, if we have 100%, it's a lot more kids than what we have now.
Right.
And so it's access, but again, talking to Leo from Benchmark, he's aware that we're, looking at this, and again, we've hired another custodian in all of our schools, with the exception of Pittsburgh, during the day to help accommodate that as well.
I'm gonna just take a minute here. We're at 8 o'clock, so we need to take a vote to extend our meeting.
I'm going to extend the meeting beyond 8 o'clock.
We got a motion from Lou, second from Lorna, all in favor? Any opposed? Jen's opposed?
No, I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. Jen, you had, or
Yeah,
Katie
so,
Stone, Jen, you had a couple of questions.
yeah, so I guess it comes down also to, you know, we've got some more spaces, we've got some more spaces to clean now that we're using, like, example for the music area, the music room, you know, we're putting students in that adds that kind of cleaning level up. And I do feel like our custodians are kind of the frontline healthcare people. I mean, when it comes to protecting the health of our students and our staff. So I do, you know, very concerned about making sure those cleaning things are done to the expectation of the staff and you, Jason. And also, you know, have the ability to clean all the spaces and the time in order to do that. They're not our RSU1 staff people. They're contracted. So I just want to make sure that nothing gets left behind in dealing with a contractor versus what would happen maybe if it was a staff person. Going back to the third grade in the music room, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you just affirmed your comment.
Okay. So just to understand that's going to be one classroom teacher and one ed tech, and there's going to be 3 spaces that the students are going to be in?
No, I mean, there's the option for them to use those spaces is all I meant, Jen. So like they will primarily be in the music room, but like in order to continue to increase space, if you know, the ed tech could take 3 or 4 up to the stage for an activity or to do a lesson there or to or potentially, you know, to work through. I'm just saying those spaces are options. They won't be assigned into those different spaces. They will have access to those spaces off from the music room for that teacher and ed tech to, you know, design how best to, you know, to work with that group of students.
Okay. And for 4th grade, did you say the 4th grade is being split into 3 classes or not?
Yes, yeah, they will. The staff member that comes down from the 3rd floor will end up being in the 3rd grade, one of the 3rd grade classrooms that gets vacated, and will have. I think they will end up being 12, 12, and 8. I believe is what it will end up being, roughly. Okay. You know, it'll be within that, but yeah, they will be 3 parts.
All right. I guess my, you know, my last question would be, and my concern is that because we're going to have so much student movement here, that the parents would have as much time as possible to be able to respond to what this will look like for their child. So as clear enough communication and enough time to process that before it happens. And I hope that as we are planning to go now into full time and all the energy and time that's spent to put into that planning, I really hope that this is not a short-lived exercise. I know that we're doing this because the parents want it, but I hope that all this effort that we're doing doesn't end up getting spent very few weeks in it, and then we're changing and readjusting everybody back to the hybrid model. And whatever that means with student assignments and classroom teachers. I mean, I imagine that would change. So I hope we don't end up hurting our students more by making them change through these many different phases of how we're organizing things.
I would, you know, ultimately it's going to be, you know, I don't want to be sitting where you are, Jen, because ultimately you're part of the team that's going to help make that decision. But I would say this, though, I have, you know, I've gone back and forth, and I mean, like we have to recognize the benefit of getting the students back 5 days a week. I mean, that you know, like it isn't going to be perfect. There's never going to be a perfect time to do it. There really isn't. We've learned that, if anything, from not doing it on the 21st to now, you know, there's more cases all around us, which just makes it incredibly difficult. But, you know, having kids in school 5 days a week is good for them. We are doing it, again, I think this plan, I'm confident in the plan. Is it without risk? No, but no plan is without risk at this point. So I agree. I also just have slowly come to the realization that before next June, we're probably going to be in all 3 phases. We've done the hybrid, we have to get them back K-5. Whether we decide it's not now and it's in February or March, we are going to have to get them back full time for their benefit. So I just, I think in the long run, it gives us some flexibility, to be honest. And I think, it is why, though, Jen, to be honest, and for the school board, it is why I've put such an effort into doing this with people that I know and people that we know as a community at Woolwich, because it will take a layer of that uncertainty out in the long run. It's hard. It's hard. It's not easy work, but.
No, I'm glad that you kind of mentioned that, Jason, about, being in our position as the board, because I would say that I'm putting this decision and the onus of this decision on your shoulders, to say that if you tell us that you are organized enough and ready enough, and you've got staff behind you, and you figured out all the logistics, if you say that you're ready for this, I'm going to put personally the responsibility of making this decision comes to me. But if you tell me you're ready, then you're the person amongst everybody else who knows enough to make this decision. So I'm gonna call you responsible for, if you tell me it's a go ahead, then that's what I'm gonna be able to go ahead with. Because I know that you wouldn't say that you're ready unless you have all those things done. So I'm gonna hold you accountable personally, as I would hold any building administrator, because I think that you are ultimately the leader of that building and the ability to make those decisions. But and I'm not asking for it to be perfect. I just, as I said before, I want to make sure that it has been planned enough to the point where we have the most ability to be successful, which means students are healthy, staff is healthy, and that we've had enough time to work out the logistics of this, because you're in a much bigger school with many more students, much more difficult to do than Pittsburgh. I understand, but I hope that if we decide to do this, that we've done as much planning and resolving of issues prior to doing it, to give us the most capable, most opportunity of being successful.
Well, you're never going to have a situation where all the, it's the maximum, we don't know what we don't know. So, issues could arise that Jason and the administrators in all the schools and our superintendent, the assistant superintendent, just are not haven't anticipated.
And I'm not talking about I'm talking the anticipated ones. Just as long as we resolved everything that we know right now is the best we can do, but to have those things resolved.
You're right. We look to the experts, we look to the people with their feet on the ground. Obviously our principals spend more time in their individual buildings than we as board members do, or even should, frankly.
Absolutely.
We look to their expertise and their input, but it is our decision, balancing things that they may not be so keenly interested in balancing. It's ultimately, the decision rests with the board. I know you know that.
Yeah, but not being able to know what we don't know, I'm going to take the building administrators go ahead. If they say they have all the staff issues resolved and all the other issues resolved, I have to leave it up to the administrative people to say, if that's their recommendation, they feel good about it.
Well,
I can't know what I don't know either, so I'm just going to have to.
No, I think clearly from Jason's presentation and Patrick's, and now Katie had her hand up. I don't know what she wants to say, but we have a pretty clear recommendation from those individuals to go ahead and open that what we've been able to learn from Pittsburgh, that what we've been able to apply from what's known within those individual buildings in terms of spacing concerns, staffing issues, we're deal with the personality, or not personality, but fitting students into those classes, you know, that they feel most comfortable with. But, you know, we got to decide one way or the other. We, the six, you know, the six of us.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think as a board, we decided, you know, as the fall went on, that, you know, our goal is certainly to get everyone back 100% if that was at all safe and possible. And that's the direction we've been taking. And I want to thank all the administrators for their thoroughness, and to Katie and Patrick as well for coordinating all that with them. The reports have been very thorough. You know, their planning has been great. And it's even appropriate, I think, that it's been, you know, one school at a time too, because we're getting to see any issues and how they're working it out, and then each school successively is able to learn from that as well. So I just want to thank you all very much, because I know this isn't easy, and there is no perfect plan, but thank you for taking that time, because, you know, we are all united in that goal. And as long as the doctors say it's safe, and as long as everybody else says this is the way to go, this is the direction we're going to go in. So that's why I'll be voting to move forward for Woolwich.
Any questions, Lorna? Yeah.
I don't really.
You're okay for now? Yeah, Lorna?
Are you good? Okay. I don't really have questions, because I think they've been any questions I've had has been answered. But I just wanted to take a few minutes on my thought process, just to share it with the rest of you before we vote, if we vote tonight. And so I'm feeling like I have a lot more data and plans than I did when we were faced with this decision before. It was a shock before, when I thought we were going 100%, to realize that we really didn't have a whole lot in place. So I feel better. I don't think there's any, speaking as an employer, which we are, the district, I don't think there's any business or employer that hasn't had to constantly adapt and respond, and frankly often let people go. So I'm aware that we are also an employer, and I worry about our staff, but unfortunately that's kind of the nature of COVID. I think education is essential, and that I see my role is to see what's best for the student, through the lens of the student. And our job is to educate, and then to educate safely. And as Jen said, if our goal is, if we're hearing that we have to meet the framework, the 6 areas of safety, and we're being told we can, then that's a win. Remote learning, I don't think, is a success, and it certainly isn't equitable. So as winter approaches, I just want our students to see that their educational institutions are there for them, and that they are welcome and warm and fed, and they're surrounded by educators and professionals who will help guide them to be the best versions of themselves. And then lastly, to the community, Dr. Shaw mentioned this today. If you go back and listen to his update, that ask, are you in or not? Because the COVID cases coming into schools are coming in, and what happens in our community can very well derail everything we're trying to do. So as we all make decisions, whether it's Thanksgiving or a baby shower or a private party, it very well can have an effect on our plans. So I think we're all just going to have to dig deep if we pull this off. But that's it. I feel like my questions have all been answered. And that's it for me.
Okay, thanks, Laura. Any other questions? I do just quickly want to get back to Anita's comment on timing, and I know the 14-day period would be great to be able to reach, but I guess, symptoms, or certainly the test can be affected within a much shorter window than that, like 3 days, right? At least that's what I understand. I don't know if Dr. Ham
The potential incubation period, but, I brought that up just as a matter of raising a question that I thought might be out there that others might have. It shouldn't be taken as a reflection of how I feel necessarily.
I think at this point, where I sit is a perspective of that's just a risk that I think we all just have to acknowledge and consider as we make this decision, whatever decision we end up making. It doesn't necessarily mean that I think it should sway us or delay the start of it. I just think that it's important to acknowledge that it is there.
The interesting thing for me that brings up in Lorna's comments as well is that we are all in this together. And by all, I mean parents, kids, and the teachers. And part of the responsibility for keeping kids safe in that holiday period doesn't rest with the schools. I mean, we're not there. It rests with the parents. And the direction that we're getting from our public health folks and everyone else is that everyone needs to be cautious during that period of time when families have traditionally gathered and gotten together. And I think our success and you're right. I think Jen's brought it. Dr. Hannah brought it up. Schools have not been really the hotbed of transmission of this disease among each other, but it is. We don't see the kids for that long every day, and really how they behave outside of school is a parental responsibility, and I hope that we can, and I know parents are very serious about this. I have absolutely no doubt of that, but it just is a reminder to me that this is a shared responsibility. If we can work real hard to keep your kids safe in school, but parents have to work equally as hard to maintain that safety for their kids outside of the classroom.
Patrick,
Just to go back really quick to what Dr. Shaw had pressed upon this morning, he mentioned his briefing today. He did want to emphasize to everyone who was listening that in making note of that transmission is not necessarily happening in schools. That's an important thing. He didn't want anyone to hear that as being not acknowledging the seriousness of it. However, what he wanted the takeaway to be for people is to understand that right now we're at a point with our kids that the importance of them being in school and their mental health needs, their emotional needs, their social emotional needs outweigh that risk that they could bring it into the school. Okay. And I think that's something we just need to be conscious of is keep reminding ourselves of that that's a huge piece of the need that we're trying to address. We are, at the end of the day, our job is to teach, but in doing that, we're part of a greater community and our kids have these other needs.
And I don't,
Jen?
My questions weren't focused on should it happen or not. My questions were really focused on how it was going to happen and the planning and the ability to answer those questions well before we did something, not an if, should we do it or not. But I was, this is even though we have one template in Phippsburg on how it went, it's a dramatically smaller school with smaller kids, and I just felt like we're going into something much more complex with many more students and issues being changed for families, and just the logistics of making sure that this was a thoroughly assessed and addressed issue before it happened, not to have to keep making up and solving things as it was happening. And also the importance that I think, what Phippsburg let us is the importance of that, having your staff be completely resolved, having all those staff issues resolved prior to something like this makes everybody more confident going forward with it, and how you have to change. You have to address things that you don't know about, of course, and nothing's talking about being 100% anything. It's just about the good preparation and the ability to do this, because it's only going to get more complicated from this. I mean, this is a complicated school because it's big, because it's got so many different grade levels. And so I think it takes getting a lot of those logistics very specific answers to those, made sure those are resolved and found before the first day the kids come through the door. So I didn't want to make it sound like I didn't want this to happen. I want things to happen that parents want to happen for their kids. And before we heard the survey was a lot of parents. I don't things have changed. I don't know if there's still that many parents out there feeling the same. I think every day that sense gets different for people in terms of what they've experienced. But I'm just gonna put, all I can do is be able to hear the information that I'm getting recommended from everybody and make a decision on those recommendations. So some of that information, I have no other way to know except for to hear it from the administrators. So I think my vote is gonna be very weighed on what I've been told here tonight and what I have to rely upon. And that's where I'm putting the onus back on the shoulders of people that are making those recommendations for me. And that I hope that we're getting everything that we need to know.
Any other comments?
I just can't, just logistically speaking, can we, if there's gonna be a motion, can we leave the date open? A little leery about just saying, okay, it's as of such and such a date, whether as they continue to evaluate this week, to leave it open to say when they are ready at some point, we're assuming December, provided it works. I don't know that I want to.
I thought I heard Jason suggest that, we need a target date so that he can back up into notification.
So he definitely wants it. So he definitely wants it December 7th. Okay.
That's a firm recommendation. That's part of the recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, if you want me to weigh in on that, I mean, I obviously we want to do what's safe. If that's a determining factor, my recommendation is that the 7th would be the earliest. I mean, that would be the time frame that I would be comfortable in being able to get this communicated with families and continue some of the very small details that are left to work out with staff as we go through that transition and actually get people physically moved to new spaces. Obviously, if you decided a different date, then that's more time. But
no, Jason, I'm not saying I don't know that we need to decide on the date. It's just I think it should be phrased that the earliest would be December 7th. I don't want to get into the same situation we got when we said, oh, we're all going to be ready at the end of September. We were feeling pretty good about it. If it works out over the next week as you're figuring this out or whatever time frame you need, that's fine. I just want to make sure it's open so that if you say, oh, we hit a glitch or this is looking like this, hey, you know what? It's going to be better if we start it a week later.
I think you just make the motion with a goal of December 7th.
That's what I'm saying. I just want to make sure if everyone's okay with that, with as a goal, then if it needs to be moved, it needs to be moved. I just didn't want to get locked in, that's all.
Thank you.
Just quick, I wanted to say to Jennifer that I appreciated all your comments and questions, and I was really glad because it wasn't me. For once. Yeah. And then December, I think you just phrased it right, that if we could make the motion in that for December 6th, understanding that Jason will let us know if it's not going to work. But I think that makes sense versus leaving it wide open. That makes sense.
Well, the environment will let us know too.
And,
Anything can come up.
exactly.
Schools can be closed.
We didn't hear anything about busing. So am I assuming that the busing is all worked out in terms of?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked right from the get-go with Bath Bus about, having those 2 runs. I think we have had some conversations about, could we possibly do it with 1 run because of the amount of students that are riding the buses right now. But again, when students go back 5 days a week, Bath Bus is just a little concerned that more kids will, ride those buses. So we're going to start with the 2 that we had, kind of anticipated from a financial standpoint and also logistics standpoint, right from the get-go. And then we're going to monitor that closely. If we can get down to 1 bus run, then we certainly will try to do that. But so we still got, a little bit to work out there, but yeah, again, I mean, thank you to the staff and also to Jason, been very thorough. we threw out some other dates back a while ago, and we bumped those dates back because we felt we needed more time to work things out. And so, again, I think it's been a very thorough process. So I'll leave it there.
And we didn't hear from Tim, so I assume that
Yeah, we've been.
that
and
coming
we've
from
been-
specifically about this date.
Yeah, we've been working with Tim. We've kind of, I've talked to him. We gave a couple, dates about when this might come about, so that Tim's aware as well.
Yeah, framing a motion in terms of a goal of December 7th is would be okay with me. I just want to be sure that we firm that as quickly as possible, because there's planning that needs to be done on the parent side of this equation. So, I wouldn't want that the goal aspect of this to hang out there till December 4th, and then, a notification goes out on Friday that, oh yeah, by the way, your kid's coming to school, 100% of the time on the 7th. So,
No, I think Jason, he's ready to move communication ASAP. So I think with the goal of December 7th, makes sense that would be our date, unless
Unless the
something,
state tells you.
or if somebody that we, that we now can proceed, if the vote goes, positive tonight, we can proceed by offering a contract agreements. Again, if somebody would ever change their heart, or something was to happen to somebody that they couldn't take one of those positions, again, something like that could push something back. But
there's been nothing about this year that hasn't been disruptive. But I think we all, certainly I do, just continue to hope that we look at this as a temporary thing for the district. It might take till September of next year, but we'll get back to normal before we know. I want to thank the board for, I'm saying this before the motion gets out, before there's even a vote, but thank the board for its questions and for the seriousness with which we approach this issue. So do I have a motion to, I'm assuming there's no further questions. Any further questions, discussion? Do I have a motion?
Which folks want to do it? I would do it, but
I'll do it. I'll make a motion
But you might
for
want to.
return to 100% for Woolwich Central School with a target date of December 7th.
Pre-K to 5.
Oh, pre-K to 5, sorry. Do you want me to repeat it so it's better for the record? I make a motion for Woolwich Central School pre-K through 5 to return 100% with a target date of December 7th.
Oh, there you go.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Lou. And now, according to Robert's rules, we have an opportunity for discussion. Any further discussion on this? Okay, thanks. So can we have all in favor? Any opposed? No, so it's unanimous. Great, thank you very much. Thank you.
Good luck, Jason.
Steve, could I just make a quick comment?
No. Yes.
Okay. Fair enough.
Go ahead.
No, I just want to thank you for your support. I mean, it's important to have the decision so we can move forward with the communication piece. But I do welcome any and all questions. You have my email. It just helps us. The more questions that get asked help us to prepare the best we can. I want the same thing that you all want, is a safe and healthy return for all of our students in being able to do what we do best, and that's educate them. So please send me any questions, and I will do my best to answer answer it the best that I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks. Okay.
So where are we at for next meeting?
13.0, next meeting date, location. Our next meeting is Monday, December 21st. And we'll leave that on the books, but once again, if we need to come back sooner, as we did for this meeting, we'll come back sooner. We'll still be remote, undoubtedly, so we'll be meeting here in a similar way.
Can I ask one question on
Sure.
that?
Yep.
And if it comes down to, would you think that we could, I'm sure we will anyway, get an update on how it's looking for our Bath elementaries, so if we need to get a little more creative, rather than wait until December 21st.
No, we wouldn't wait. We would either, have an emergency virtual meeting if we had to, continually provide you with, provide you with updates anyway, but if we're ready for an action like we just did tonight, then we could certainly fit that in.
That'd be great, because
Yeah,
I'm sure
no, I
those,
know.
those parents
Yeah,
are also
yeah,
wondering
right.
if we're gonna be
Well,
equally.
Right.
I think from my, my conversations with Patrick, I know that it is the priority for the district at this point to continue those conversations with individual buildings. But, as Jen kind of alluded to, each building has its nuances, and each has very different needs. So there is no, you're right, there is no cookie cutter, approach to this. I mean, each building needs to be massaged and worked on separately. But certainly it is. I know it's Patrick's priority and the principal's priority, and I think it's the priority of the board to continue to push this as hard and fast as we can to get kids back safely and get them back in class.
Yeah, I know we're all very open, but, parents have concerns. I answer every question that I get from a parent, if they're a Woolwich parent or not. I mean, it's not just, one set, you don't have to be from any special place. I mean, I know we all are very good at responding to that. So if you're a staff member, a parent, a citizen, anybody who's concerned about these decisions we make here, then please, reach out to all of us. We're all here to try to help answer questions, and we can't don't have the answers. We're really good at finding them.
Okay. Okay, there's no further business. Like I said, the meeting is scheduled for the 21st. We'll meet sooner if we need to. And I have a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn, second by Megan. All in favor? Any opposed? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good meeting.
Yeah. I'm gonna make a motion. Stop.